Teammates, we are back once again. If this is your first time listening to the Move Swiftly podcast, welcome to the show. Great to have you. Looking forward to having you back for more. Welcome, by the way, to the number one show on innovative teamwork. It's what I do. You guys know me at this point. This is what it's all about. And again, today, I have an incredible guest who, as funny as it is, I just asked him how many books he wrote, and he goes, "Look, I lost count. I lost count. Over a dozen. Just tell him over a dozen, man." So, with all that being said, Mr. Bo Bennett, welcome to the Move Swiftly podcast. Pleasure to actually meet you, man. Virtually meet you, I'll say.
Thank you. Thank you. It's great to be here. Thanks for having me on.
Well, before I get into it, because like you said, you have done a lot of great things. You have a lot of intellectual property out there. You have a very strong concept, I'd say, in terms of just challenging the way people normally think and giving them more to think about. So I'll give you the microphone for a little bit and just kind of introduce yourself to the audience, tell them what you do, what you're all about. And, again, this is the Move Swiftly podcast. So we don't have any time limits here. We keep going. We keep going as long as we got to, as long as we have to. So, I'll let you take it away a little bit.
All right. Yeah, you bet. I guess I'll start with my college education. I graduated back in 1994 with a degree in marketing. I wanted to go to business school because I wanted to make money. I mean, that was like it. That's all I wanted at the time. So
Right. I was the same
that
way.
was
You pick business school because you think it's just going to make you money. And that's
right.
sometimes the initial introduction to college, and then you realize so much more. So, and by the way, this happens too. I keep everything organic on this show. So if I do get excited or cut you off, it's nothing personal. It's just
Hey, don't worry.
what we do on
Don't
this
worry
show,
about it.
man. We keep everything rolling. That's what makes it so great. Everything is organic here, folks. Go
Conversations are good, two-way. All
ahead.
right. So yeah, I was really interested in getting a degree in marketing because I felt like that was the best educational path to financial success. And as you mentioned, it's not that easy. You don't just like take the courses, then all of a sudden you're rich. However, I would argue definitely that compared to other courses like you know, women's studies or whatever, you're better off if that is your goal, financial success, to pursue something in business, especially in marketing, if you have that entrepreneurial spirit. So that's what I did. That's what I had. Although, and I'll throw this in there now, my interest has always been in psychology. I always had like a strong interest in that, but I didn't want to pursue it academically again for the financial reasons.
Hmm.
So after I graduated school, I uh, I did some like small businesses, and then eventually I started a business in the internet back in 1994, like before people even knew about the internet, starting a web hosted company. And after about 6 years in 2001, I sold it for $20 million. So that was like the big financial win for me. So that was great. And that sale allowed me to devote my time and attention and focus to things that I really wanted to do, which was business, but I also like psychology and learning about how the mind works and critical thinking. That was important too. I was always fascinated by like different religions and people's beliefs and why they held different beliefs.
Hmm.
So I kind of went down that road, and that brought me to back to school basically to get my master's in psychology, ultimately my PhD in social psychology. And all during that time, I did a bunch of businesses, wrote a bunch of different books, and here I am today talking to you.
Well, you kind of take me back to when I took my first business course, and I actually wrote an article about this recently. But the professor said to us the first day, he goes, "Look, everything is business. Everything we do is business. It's going to be integrated in every little aspect that you're involved in." And then he went on to talk about how the fact that we were at a community college better served us in business because we had to wake up, we had to make our own breakfast, we had to deal with the traffic, we had to do all the things to actually get to the actual classroom versus you get someone that's on a fancy campus and they just walk across a nice lawn, they have their breakfast served, then all of a sudden they're supposed to learn business. So with all that,
Right.
I have to ask you, when you made that sale, what was your feeling at that point? Because you made that huge sale at a fairly young age. What what drove you to say, you realize, money doesn't solve all our issues. Like, what were some of the things that you went through that debunked that myth, to where it's like, look, I have all the money in the world, I'm supposed to be happy. What's some of the things that made you say, look, I'm going to go back to school, I'm going to go learn something, I'm going to go make it so I'm actually putting my money to use. So, that's something I think is very, very important, especially for business owners to hear, because they
Right.
think that once they get that almighty dollar, once they get that comfortable salary, they think business is over. But you still got to get in the game, man. This thing is going to keep rolling and rolling, rolling regardless. So good.
I think it's mostly just drive. I've always been like a driven person, and I've never been satisfied with just kind of sitting back and doing nothing. In fact, we always talk about like, what if you had like $1 billion? What would you do? And people talk about, I'd go to the beach, and I'd like, no, you probably wouldn't. I think a lot of
That's
people
for a
think
week.
that and believe that, but the moment they do, they're going to say, no, this is not for me. I want to do something.
Hmm.
That's the way that we're built. That's the way that we're wired for the most part. So we want to keep active. And that's what keeps us alive, young, healthy. If we stop doing stuff, we like physically, not only mentally but physically, start to die as well. Like
Hmm.
our body parts of our body start to shut down, and it's not good at all. So, but that's not what I was thinking. I wasn't thinking about the long-term consequences. There's so much that I want to do and wanted to do,
Hmm.
that it was just something like, okay, what's next? I actually literally started my next company one day later after I closed the sale for the first big company. One day later, that's when I filed the paperwork for the new company.
So based on all your business experience though, what are some of the challenges that you've had? Because again, like I said, a lot of the audience members, they're business owners, they're going through this, they're trying to get this sale, they're trying to hire the right people, and you as a person that is experienced in that field, what do you see as like a common challenge when it comes to starting your own business and making it to the point where it is sellable, or if they want to keep running it, how do you answer that question?
Well, I think so many people have different challenges. It's a very individualistic thing. Like, what challenges do people face the most? For example, some people are very risk averse and some aren't. So those who aren't will have challenges with risk, like dealing with risk, like, oh boy, I can't do this. What if this doesn't work out well? So they're always going to be at that low level. They're never going to take that big chance in order to get to the next level. So
Mhm.
that's kind of like a serious challenge that has a lot to do with the person's personality, or maybe even just their mental state at the time, just thinking about things long term. Along the same lines is people running into the problem of being content. So you're running a business, you're making a little money, things are going well, you're not working that hard, the life is good. It's not great, but it's good. And then some people are like, okay, this is cool. And they don't have that drive anymore, that motivation to push them. And that's why people who do really well tend to be the ones who are like in deep financial trouble, or ones who,
Yes.
or like either like it's either the money that's pulling you or the money that's pushing you. In other words, it's either the money that you're indebted to somebody, and you're in big
Yeah.
trouble and you got to do something, otherwise you're screwed big time, or you've got these big dreams and you really want to buy something or go somewhere and you need a lot of money to do it. So that's kind of like the positive aspect of it. But either way, positive or negative, the carrot or the stick, it works.
Hmm.
But that's the important part, to make sure that you're always motivated. And if you're not, and you fall into that problem of contentment, figure out like, okay, what is it? Like, is this really it for me, or do I want more? And just keep on thinking about your goals and what you want to do.
Absolutely. And the thing is, I think you said the key word. It's, what are you actually motivated by? Again, you listeners, you guys here, again, we've been at this for 4 years. This show's been going strong for 4 years. And I tell you, day in and day out, it comes out every single day, every single guest I've had on, every single solo episode I've done, every single thing that comes out on this very feed. tell you your motivation. You have to have an intrinsic motivation. You cannot look outward. You cannot look for other people for validation for what it is you do. If you are not intrinsically motivated, you will burn out. You'll burn out for the rough days. And trust me, we're going to get into it in a second, but there will be some rough days. There's absolutely nothing that you want to have that's just going to, at least that you want to have that's worth having, that's going to come easy. So, you know, that being said, one of the topics and one of the things I did my, I do my homework when I have guests on. One of the things that you speak, like one of your main topics is something called logical fallacies. All right. And for just, I'm going to make sure I read the definition out there for you listeners. And I want you to kind of take it away in terms of what landed you on that topic and what makes it something that you can speak so fluently about. So before you answer them, fallacy is defined as a mistaken belief, especially one based on unsound or on an unsound argument. And you have a book called Logical Fallacies. So, please take it away and kind of explain what you mean by logical fallacies and just what went in behind that type of a thinking.
Yeah, you bet. So I got interested in logical fallacies when I started spending a ridiculous amount of time on debate boards. This was back before the PhD, when I was really kind of like in a downtime, like wondering like what's next, what am I doing? So I was in these debate boards and I would come across these arguments that sounded great. I mean, like on the surface, they're like, yeah, wow, this seems pretty convincing. But the conclusion was obviously wrong. Take, for example, like the
Yeah, that's what I
flat
was
earth.
going to ask. I was going to ask you for an example of an argument.
Sure, like the flat Earth. Somebody's arguing for the flat Earth, right?
Hmm.
So they would give you this very eloquent argument that it's like, damn, maybe the Earth is flat, and you're wondering what's going on here. This can't be a good argument, and the Earth can't be spherical at the same time. There has to be a disconnect somewhere, and there is, and that's what I figured out. Like it's these things called logical fallacies, these errors in reasoning, these problems in the argument structure and the reasoning behind the argument that sounds good. And if you're not really engaged in critical thinking, on the surface, it looks good and you could fall for it. And so many people do. But once you understand what a logical fallacy is, what like the main logical fallacies are, you start to recognize them. And no longer are you hoodwinked by these what appear to be good arguments that definitely aren't. So you'll be able to see an argument and say, okay, yeah, this sounds good, except you got a major problem here, and here's the problem. And then you could point it out. So that's what really brought me into logical fallacies. And at the same time, kind of like the sister to logical fallacies are cognitive biases. These are mental distortions they're not bugs in the human mind, they're features. Because of them, we're allowed to think more efficiently and swiftly, and so it works
Say
well.
that, say that word again. The move, what move? Yeah,
Swiftly.
I love it. I
I
love
threw that in there just for you.
it.
So it
I love
works
it. That was
well.
unintentional plug, folks.
Right.
Mm-mm.
Uh,
Go
So
ahead. Yeah,
yeah, so
you got
it
cut off.
works well, but
We could always
it's
edit.
yeah, there's a little video issue there. But in terms of problematic thinking, it is a big issue.
Mm-hmm.
And if you think about like our evolutionary past, we're basically wired in order to survive and reproduce. And that's pretty much it. That's all nature cares about. Nature doesn't care about whether if we can make a rational decision about politics or pick a good politician or choose the right religion or like it doesn't care, right?
You know that's exactly where I was going with this conversation because I'm a sports guy and I read your bio. I know you're into the fitness world as well. And
Right.
what I watched as a person that's been watching sports his entire life, I've seen journalism go down the tube and now debates have taken over the minds of the masses. I've seen, ESPN now, it's not about actually reporting the news. It's actually about people giving their own biases, their own opinions, and whoever can say the most is the loudest ultimately
Right.
gets the control of the masses. And again, we could take it to politics, we could take it to sports, and we could take it to how our young people even use social media nowadays. When it comes to, okay, do I trust this person because they have 100 likes or because they're more popular on social media? I'm going to listen to this person because, that's where I want to be. So when you break it down and you see the world we live in now, and if people can get an understanding of it, how do you think that improves what everything we're watching and everything we're looking at, especially with I mean, I'm really reluctant to even bring up our presidential debate, but yes, these are our two candidates. How do you
Right.
even, how do you even bring it up? Like, how do you sort of fix these issues that we see on a regular basis when it comes to everybody's opinion is just being distorted, and that's what's taking control over the masses.
Well, it's extremely important, first of all.
Hmm.
And I mean, we have to realize that right out of the gate, that
Yes.
critical thinking is extremely important. And one of the reasons you probably heard before that a democracy or government or people, whatever, it's only as powerful and it only will be upheld if the people in the democracy are informed voters. That
Mm.
is, we're not all a bunch of idiots that fall for the
Say it
stupid
plainly.
rhetoric, right? So we need, each one of us, we need to we need to employ critical thinking, and we need to use that in not only decision making, but the way that we vote, the way that we even watch TV, what we support, the
Mhm.
things we like on Facebook or social media or Instagram, whatever. Like all of that's important. We probably think it's not. Like, okay, who cares if I watch a stupid YouTube video and like it? Well, you times a million, you just supported somebody who's throwing out a bunch of nonsense out there with your views. It makes a big difference. And like at ESPN you mentioned,
Mhm.
I always find it funny. I go into like a restaurant or something, ESPN's on. They've got like the 12 people like the Brady Bunch, like all on the TV, all arguing, talking at the same time. Like, what the heck is going on here?
Exactly.
But the reason that that exists, and it exists a lot more now, is because people like it. People like, ooh, do you hear what he said? Burn, he got him, burn. And we don't care about facts. We don't care about information, what's actually true. We just want somebody to burn somebody else, and we want our person to do it. Same goes with politics. And it's unfortunate because that's not critical thinking, and that's not how we arrive at the truth. So hopefully, it's like, I guess I could sum it up this way: the entertainment value has taken over the truth value. And
Mhm.
that's the essential problem. So we need to get back to the truth value. The only way we could do that is for people to start caring more about the truth and about what's factual and what's real rather than what's entertaining.
Now, what are the steps? And well, first of all, I agree with everything you just said. I think that like button, I was in college when Facebook was just jumping off. And when that like button became something that can go to every single website and that started spreading, I think
Mm,
that was the demise of a lot of just critical thinking. Everything you're talking about, because you just like something, you try to get at a girl, okay, she doesn't like my post. I mean, the whole thing just gets distorted because of that one like button, and everyone's just looking to be liked and followed, right? So
right.
because I think the damage has been done, and I mean it's like a well, and everything is so difficult to you can't go back because we're not going back to life before Facebook. I call it BSM, life before social media. We're not going back. What are some of the steps you would take to get it to where we can at least get back to some critical thinking? Like for someone who's like my nephew or my niece, who one's in high school, one's in middle school, and they're growing up. I teach now. And I say it all the time. These kids are growing up in a world where social media will exist, and we as adults have a obligation to teach them how to think critically. We got an obligation to teach them how to do things the right way. What are some of the steps that you would recommend, as an expert on the subject?
Well, first, I would mention that social media isn't inherently evil. It's a tool, like a knife. You could use a knife to kill somebody, or surgeon could use it to heal somebody.
Hmm.
Social media is pretty much the same way. And I think one of the first steps we could do is we could start using it for really what it's meant to be used for, and that's enhancing social connections,
Mm.
like pure entertainment value, sharing pictures of cats and puppies and uh, like what you had for dinner, whatever, all that. It seems silly, but it brings people closer together. It gives us this connection. keeping up with friends from high school. Man, I would never ever like keep up with all these friends if it weren't for social media. But I can. It's easy, and
Right.
that's a great use for it. But what happened is it started becoming a a tool
Hmm.
for knowledge, and I think that's a major problem because there are no guardrails on the level of knowledge or what's knowledge versus what's fake,
Hmm.
and we start to lose the ability to distinguish it, especially with technology, how good it is these days, being able to uh, fabricate information and make it look real. And
Hmm.
this was before AI too. I mean, you could put up like a website that looks completely legitimate and it could be a whole bunch of nonsense. It doesn't matter, but people will fall for it. So I think one of the first
A lot of
things to do.
catfishing, a lot of catfishing going on out
Oh
there.
yeah, yeah, yeah. There was a show that my wife and I watched about catfishing. It was like a series, and that was really interesting, scary, but it was interesting to
Yeah.
watch. Uh, so yeah, the first thing to do is start using social media again for what it was meant to be used for, and stop getting information from social media.
Hmm.
There's so many, like, go back to legitimate sources,
Yeah.
and that's a big question. What is a legitimate source? But that's probably like a whole conversation for another time.
Yeah, well, again, because that brings me to actually a different place. When you say legitimate source, also the people, especially the young people, they got to know what they're passionate about. All right, you got to know what they're passionate, because if you're passionate about a certain industry, you know your legitimate sources. If you're passionate about business, you may know that you want to read everything that's coming from Forbes and what the Bloomberg is saying and things like that. So I think another piece to that is making sure we're teaching young people, hey, what are the things you really like doing? What are the things you really love doing? What do you see your future self like? Now find the legitimate sources in that arena. So now you know what to look for. You know who to follow. You know how to reach out. Like, I'll give you an example. It was my niece about 3 weeks ago. She went to Amazon just to do some like tech work and do certain things in that industry. So now she knows specifically, all right, when I get to college, I'll know how Amazon runs their business. What are some of the things I could do to improve their company? So all that stuff is great, but it's like you said, it is so easy to get distracted. So very easy to get distracted when you start to bring in like social and personal likes and all that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it's important that, again, thought leaders like us make sure we keep young people on track when we see them kind of going off the guardrails. Because I myself, again, if it's not for other thought leaders like yourself, sometimes I could find myself going off the deep end with certain. I look at bikini pics all day. If I don't have, I got to make sure I look podcast episodes, do my research, make sure certain things are done the right way. So, with that, Bo, I want to be very respectful of your time. Can you just please fulfill the listeners on how they can get in touch with you? What's next? Well, first of all, what's next in your next venture, and then how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in following up with you.
Sure. Well, to get in touch with me, actually, I'll skip that. I'll go to my what's next. I've been
Yeah.
working a lot on with artificial intelligence, with AI. I've been in the publishing industry, book publishing industry for like the last 12, 13 years. So
Hmm.
I've been incorporating AI into book publishing. I created a company
Ah.
called BookBud.ai that creates books for you and
Mhm.
publishes it. So it's like an amazing technology, having a lot of fun with it. Also working on language. I've been very interested in foreign languages. So working with AI in foreign languages and books and creating something new in that space as well. So to find out about me, I've got two websites. One is my business site. That's archieboy.com, archieboy.com. That's where all my business stuff is. And then my books, my personal books that I've written is just my name, bobennett.com.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So here's what I do on this show. This is what most of the time a lot of my listeners, I really anticipate this part of the show because I want you to use your imagination a little bit. I want you to go back to your younger self, your low point, the point where you were lost, the point that it was really difficult for you to just figure out what it is you were trying to do. I want you to pretend that young man clicked into the Zoom room and he's here now, and just speak to him, give him some words of encouragement, and we'll officially close with that.
Okay. Just going back to one time in my life when I was like, I had no idea, and that was whether to go to college or not. I worked for my dad, And I was planning just basically to just go ahead and just keep working for him in his workshop and working with like machines and plastics. I was interested in it. But then, and I had no plans for college. I never applied to any colleges. Best friend of mine said, "Come on, Bo, I'm going up to Bryan College. Why don't you come for a ride?" I'm like, "All right, let's do it." So I went with him, and the place was a country club. I mean, it was beautiful. I'm like, "Yeah, I'll go here." So it's the only place that I applied to, and fortunately I got in. So the advice that I would give myself, although I made the right decision then, but anybody, is keep an open mind to things like that, because you never know when life throws these little twists. Like just somebody will come up and say one thing, or a person that you maybe don't even know too well, but just to stay open to these different ideas and give things a shot, because it may take your life in a new direction, and a good direction too.
That's amazing, man. That is that's amazing. Just one Fred, hey, just check it out. And now look
Yeah.
at you, multi-published author, speaker, and just absolutely dominating the game. So again, as a thought leader, appreciate you coming on, man. Appreciate what you do. Keep doing what you're doing. Make sure we definitely got to stay in touch throughout. I'm amazed and honestly just love the work you do. I love people that challenge the normal way of thinking because it's so very important when it comes to everything, all the distractions that we have in this world. So, with all that,
Appreciate that.
fellow teammates, continue to move swiftly. We will talk more soon.